Hey, what's up, guys? On today's podcast, we have the head football coach at Dowling Catholic, Tom Wilson. We talk accountability, discipline, and how to define success. What's up, Coach?
What's up, Grubb?
Well, we're coming off a big game this weekend, Iowa State.
Sure.
Did you guys go?
I did. I was there with my youngest. We stayed long enough after the second delay, and then he decided it was time for us to go home. We made it home back in time to watch the rest of the game in the comfort of our own living room.
So it's fun having you on here today because I think a lot of people wanted to know the fans had to go back to their tailgate or sort of hunker down during the storm, but one delay would be a challenge. What is the coaching challenge? I mean, what are the coaches doing to keep the kids warm, stretched, and mentally in the game? And what's going on in those locker rooms?
Well, it would have to be a nightmare, to be honest with you. And Iowa State probably had an advantage just because they're in the comforts of their own home, and their locker room, that home locker room's pretty nice. And you know, they have TVs, they can lounge around a little bit and those types of things, where Iowa's was probably less accommodating just as a visitor, which is fairly natural. My guess is they had, film from how much the game had already been played each time, that they could look at different things of something they wanted to discuss with somebody. But honestly, a lot of it was probably hurry up and wait. And they were waiting it out. I think I had read where, with Iowa, they had managers and everything go get them sandwiches and so they could have something to eat. And I think part of it was there was probably a lot of discussion going on that had nothing to do with the ball game at hand, but then yet they would try to get them reined back in, especially when they knew what was going to happen. I think the radio had said, okay, it's going to start back at 6:45, 6:50. Well, once they get that news, then you really start getting people back into it, and you probably stretch a little bit more. And I think they gave them 15, 20 minutes to warm back up on the field, which is certainly plenty.
Does the game plan go out the window? I mean, the game plan that you came in with, are you making small adjustments at that point? Or on some level, are you making big game plan adjustments? And I don't know enough to know, like, in terms of watching the game, but it seemed like Iowa State had a great game plan coming in. They had the flea flicker, halfback pass kind of there in the first quarter. It seemed like they spread the game out really well. They stuck to that plan. But I mean, when you get into that, can you sort of overthink that?
Oh, I think so. To be honest with you, the only thing that was probably going to change the game plan was the weather itself, and if the field was slick and the ball and those types of things. But it seemed like they adjusted to that fairly well. It didn't seem to be a big issue, and really the field held up. I doubt they made huge adjustments. I think the game itself, and in the game, there's always adjustments being made, but nothing anymore. It'd probably be more of a detriment. Like you said, you could overthink too many things and start changing things. But you game plan and you watch film all week for a reason. In Iowa State's case, 2 weeks, because they had a bye week prior to that. So they had plenty of time to watch film, and they learned more then than they were going to during the rain delay.
Right. So for our viewers and our listeners, you're the head coach at Dowling. You're also the athletic director at Dowling. Give kind of a quick summary of sort of your journey and career to Dowling.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Monroe, Iowa, which is PCM is the school district now. And once I had graduated from college, somehow I got a head coaching job along with teaching at English Valley High School, which is in North English, Iowa. Probably had no reason to get that job. I was young. It was a tough situation. The coach that I was replacing had been fairly young, had passed away unexpectedly the year before. So I kind of went into a mess because they had interim coaches and whatnot. Long story short, spent 3 years there, loved the place. It was a great place to start, but it really wasn't a destination place for me, and I knew that. Opportunity came at Wilton High School, which is on the eastern part of the state, over by the Quad Cities. Again, teaching position, head football, had various other coachings along the way. Spent 2 years there, and then an opportunity came about right after I'd gotten married or I was supposed to get married, was at Ball State University to be a grad assistant. And I really didn't aspire at that time to be in the college game, but I thought the opportunity was too good to pass up. You get your master's paid for, and you're coaching Division I football. And I had 5 years of head coaching experience, so it's a little bit different timing than most for me to go there. But yet it also gave me more opportunities because there was an amount of trust there that they probably gave me more than what they do the typical graduate assistant. But so we moved out to Indiana shortly after we got married, spent 2 years there. During that time, I had every intention of coming back to the state of Iowa. It's where we wanted to start a family and raise our kids. And, there were, you usually don't go to the college game and be a grad assistant and then head back to the high school game. But that's the path I chose. Had a few opportunities to come back to the state of Iowa, ended up going to Dike New Hartford. And the big part of that was really who we were going to play and our schedule. Ed Thomas was in his heyday at that time at Applington Parkersburg and liked the area. My wife's family was originally from the Waterloo area, and we grew up together, but that's where they're originally from. And so I went to Dike New Hartford, again, teaching head football and, again, various other sports. And we spent 8 years there and almost left once. Had actually accepted the Southeast Polk job. And then, things kind of went haywire. And I decided if it's not perfect, I'm not going to go because I did love my job there. And so we spent 2 to 3 more years at Dike New Hartford, and then gotten a call from people in the Dowling community about my interest in this job. And really at that time, I didn't have a lot of interest. I'm coaching 2A football, had a great situation. I thought, bigger isn't always better. And I'm very comfortable with where I'm at. So I really didn't act upon it. Got another phone call urging me to apply for the job. And so I thought, why not? It doesn't hurt to check it out. And once I came down, I really felt it was something that I wanted to do. And so I was running the weight program within the PE department, really getting that part of our program going for all of our sports. And 5 years later, the AD job comes open. And then, after talking to Dr. Deegan, who was our president at the time, I decided to throw my hat in the ring with that. And then, been doing that job, both jobs, for about 10 years now, which I'm not sure it's something that I would recommend. Because just the time it takes for both tasks. But Dowling has been great about having people around me to help make it work. I've got a great staff that most of them have been with me from the football side since I got here. And, I was able to get an assistant AD, who is Mike O'Connor, who is our basketball coach, and then Mary Pick, who's been there for quite some time. And anybody that knows anything about Dowling athletics, she runs it. So I've had terrific people around me, and that's really what's helped make it work.
So here's what's interesting to me, and a lot of what we like to talk about is ultimately how people define success. I think it'd be really easy for people to look at your program and your time at Dowling, and by anybody's standards, it would be successful. But what's interesting to me about you is that you define it as successful very differently than I think generally people would look at it through their own lens of the program. And they're going to look at the wins and the losses. They're going to look at the championships. My sense is that you would define success differently. And because that's successful, this is sort of a byproduct of it with the championships. Mm-hmm. So how do you define success? I would say for you personally first, and then how do you define success for the program?
I didn't get into this business, thinking I have to win state championships in order to be successful in my career. As a teacher and a coach, you get in the business to really make a difference. And, I came from a family that my parents were divorced when I was 2 years old. And so I had a lot of people impact my life. And, one of them ended up being my football coach, who later in my life became my father-in-law. So obviously he had a tremendous impact on me. Well, I wanted to be that type of person for others. And I think sports, oftentimes it's the winning and losing that gets defined. It's the Division I scholarships that people think their kid may get that most of them do not. To them, that's success. For us, it's about the process and growing day in and day out, not only with your athletic team, but really as a person that can help define your success. So the winning and the losing, people have talked about, state championships and whatnot. Honestly, it's not something that we really ever talk about amongst our team. If we're doing some goal setting or we're doing one of our book reads or things like that, kids will bring that up. But as I tell our kids, if that's what we're focused on, and if that's the end product that we want, and we don't focus on what we're doing day in and day out, not only as a player, but really as people, we're really missing the boat and the chance to develop and be successful.
It would be hard, especially 15 to 18-year-old kids. I mean, they're defining success the way the world tells them to define success. So I would imagine most kids, they want to come in, and certainly now they don't want to be the one to not be successful, right? How do you help guide young men ultimately to define what success is for them? Because there's got to be sort of a transition for themselves to focus away from what the world tells them success should be, and then to get them to buy into this. And how do you get them there?
Honestly, you just described probably the biggest challenge that we have day in and day out. And the outside noise is probably one of the most difficult things, and that outside noise may come from home. And everybody's got an opinion of what the game's going to be this next week. So for us, it's about education. So as we emphasize to them all the time, what everybody else thinks outside this locker room really doesn't matter. Easier to say than to really be able to pull off. But, it's more our day to day. How do you go about, what's the message that you give your kids every day? So, today is Monday for us. We play Ankeny Centennial this week. The focus is going to be very little on what Ankeny Centennial is. It's more on, okay, what's going to make us better to help us be successful. But I had mentioned earlier book reads that we have done, and each year we do a book read. And honestly, as easy as that sounds, it helps keep our kids more focused on really what is important. And each of the books that we read or have read through our groups, and we will continue to read the same ones just because it's so important to our message, is the process and what you are doing day in and day out to help you get to an end product. And, if we don't take care of things today, we don't take care of things tomorrow, your opportunities to be successful further down the line become greatly decreased. And again, some of that is lip service. Some of it may be coach speak, but it's how we define everything. And really, the slogan that we've had probably for the last 10 years is team first. Well, every decision that we make, every conversation that we have with our kids, it's more about what is the best for the team and the entire program, and representing themselves, their school, their family is more important than what their individual desires may be.
We talked about this the other day. I was one of those kids that was able to sort of hide behind success. We had, in general, many wins, championships. And so somebody like me was able to sort of hide behind success. Everybody's, oh, you guys are doing great, But I knew my education was struggling. My focus was struggling. And I wasn't maximizing my potential. And this isn't something that I learned until later in life. But I think that's what's interesting about what you guys are doing. And how do you work with those kids? I mean, you made the comment the other day that it's as much gratifying some of the kids that don't get a chance to play. And they have an opportunity to whether there may be a kid that's playing that gets to sort of hide behind the success of the team, right? Or there's a kid that's not playing, and how does he build that for himself? Does that make sense? How do you affect that kid that's sort of trying to sort of hide behind the success rather than really take ownership of their own accountability to define it for themselves?
Every kid is different. There's kids that are extremely talented, and in their mind, or possibly in their parents' mind, or in society's mind, their self-worth becomes how much success they've had on the athletic field. And honestly, that is a sad, sad thing because, whether we win or lose or whether they're all state or never play, really has nothing to do with the type of kid that they could become. And, that's tough to teach 15 to 18-year-old kids because, everybody wants that pat on the back. Everybody wants to be known as somebody that's been successful. Well, I think they tie their self-esteem to that at times, which can be a scary thing. And I think that's probably one of the weaknesses that we have in our society. You mentioned the kids that don't play. I learned a long time ago that never underestimate the impact that you can have on everybody. It's not just the kids that are playing. And I think a lot of times it's about the relationships that you build with kids that maybe aren't on the field all the time on Friday night. And for us, we all have kids that we think that we can do more for them than they may do for us on a game on Friday night. Or a lot of times the things that they do for us aren't seen by everybody else. And, that's the great thing about the sport of football is there's so many roles that people don't know and they don't understand that you can help mold people by more than the highlights that you see on the blitz after a ball game on Friday. So the big thing is I tell this story about Amara Darboe, who's played at Michigan, been in the pros. He has a phenomenal story about his life in Sierra Leone and how he got here. Everybody always wanted to talk to me about the type of athlete that Amara was. And finally, it would get under my skin a little bit because I think the world of Amara, the person. And I would just say, if you think he's such a great athlete, you ought to really get to know him because he's a more unbelievable person than he ever will be an athlete. And, he's had injuries and things like that in the pros, and he's still trying to hook back on and things like that. I'm not the least bit worried about Amara Darboe because he's got his education. He's a phenomenal kid, and whatever it is he chooses to do, he'll be just fine.
So when you talk process, how do you get, it would be hard, no different than say a president or a CEO of a big company. They can't go build a relationship with every one of the kids. So on the employees. So for you on some level, there's gotta be to what you said earlier. I mean, your coaching staff has to be that sort of boots on the ground relationship. Mm-hmm. How are you building the relationships from your position as a head coach? And then how are you empowering the assistant coaches to really build that and work that process with those kids every day that gives them wins to get that self-worth? Really as a school at Dowling, one of the things that we survey our students on is that they have somebody within the building that an adult that they think that cares about them. That's important to us as a school. Well, as an athletic department, as a football program, it's no different. We want our kids to know that we care about them as people, and it has nothing to do with the job that they did on Friday night. It's just about them as a person. And that's emphasized to our coaching staff. They know that just based on our meetings, our communications, that relationships are really important. And to me, that's what education is about building relationships, because once you have that, you can truly coach kids. You can compliment, you can criticize, you can correct. Once you have a relationship with somebody, the lines of communication are much more open. And I feel like you can drill deeper, and the motivation becomes as much intrinsic as it does anything else. Another thing that we have done with just, intrinsic and extrinsic, three-dimensional coaching is a program that's out there that we've trained our head coaches on. And we are about to take a bigger step with all of our coaches. And, that becomes 100 and some people when you look at all of our coaches. And all it is we want to be able to better impact kids. And it's really not, we feel like if you take care of things day in and day out, whether it be the relationships, how you attack practice, how you attack really bringing your team together, the winning and the losing will take care of itself. The success will come if you do things the right way. And that's really the basis of which we run our program. Now, again, there's problems along the way with that. You've got kids that want more playing time. You've got parents that want their kids to have more playing time. You've got a lot of outside noise. Media has an opinion
opinion on how things should go on. They bring the rankings out every Sunday. At least that's what they tell me, because I really don't pay too much of attention to it. But yet that's the outside noise that makes our job that much more difficult. So really, we try to get it so our kids have blinders on and focus on the task at hand of what we have to do day in and day out. Another thing that we've done many times when I've felt we've had troubles doing that is we do our actual goal setting, short-term and long-term, and we do it as a team, and there's steps in order that we have to take to be able to reach the ultimate goal for that week. And a lot of times that helps us focus for that week, which in turn becomes weeks, which in terms helps us become successful in the long run. And honestly, I think it was 2 years ago when I did that the last with our team. It reminded me, Jack Kerner had played for Iowa this week. It started at safety, and he was instrumental on that team a couple years ago that won it, that my son Ben was on. And he was a big part of our goal setting at that time too, because he was so laser focused on really the task at hand that he helped make others be that way as well.
So I do want to ask this question, because they talk about, young kids and getting accountability and getting discipline. I think a throwaway, in my opinion, a throwaway comment would be, well, this is easy for you because Dowling recruits. It's easy because of the kids and the parents that you have going there, that it works. It's not going to work at my school. What do you say to that?
Well, I think every school has its challenges, and Dowling is a changing school community as we speak. I think when I got here, our diversity percentages was about 12,000. Now we're pushing 30. So our school is changing, and the challenges within that school is also changing. And a lot of times I will tell the kids that come, Dowling's not going to change for you. These are the expectations. It's your job to meet them. As for the recruiting, I've been on record in saying before, people really don't know how we do things, and most of them don't want to know the truth. Here's the way I look at it. I can't control what happened 25, 30, 40 years ago. I wasn't here. I've been here the last 15. And I really don't run my program or school any differently than what I did at Dyke New Hartford, English Valley, or Wilton, and those are all public schools. And I grew up in a public school. You build a product that people want to be a part of, whether it's the school itself, whether it's an athletic team, whether it's other programs. People want to be around successful things, successful people, if they truly want to become better. And, it's no different. You take Valley, for example, or Waukee. They get kids that transfer in there too. Why? Because they're pretty good at what they do. And it's no different at Dowling. It just gets magnified because it's a private school and people want to say that we recruit everybody. The truth of the matter is most of our kids have played in our Catholic football league that are in our football program. A lot of the kids that are playing basketball come from the parochial school that's played in the NBA program, no different than our girls. We have feeder programs. Now, one thing I'll say is if somebody contacts us, we'll certainly talk to them. I did the same thing at every other job that I've had, but I'm going to make sure that they come to Dowling and meet with me. I'm not going to be meeting with them at the local Starbucks to try to convince them to come to our school. So hopefully our product sells itself. Dowling's a great academic institution. If somebody wants to go down that road, we would certainly talk to them. If I had $1 for every time I told a kid that had an interest in coming to Dowling, if you're coming here just for the football, you're making a big mistake, because you have to buy into the total culture of the school to really get the full benefits.
That's the thing we've learned from for us, it's core values, right? It sort of attracts and detracts the type of people to the program, and success breeds success, right? People want to be around, even in the private sector, people want to work and be around successful companies, successful people. But what we have learned is that it's the core values. And so for us, or for a business that can really make that be, the staple of who they are, and then everything goes through that lens. Even with us, it's what attracts and detracts people. And I feel like businesses or other people looking from sort of the outside in, that's sort of the easy, there's always sort of a throwaway comment, as like in our business, another builder successful. Oh, well, they're doing this, right? And it just sort of takes away from the fact that if you really get down to it, the businesses or the schools that I think are good over long periods of time, it's about the core values. It's about the people that they attract and detract.
I always find it interesting because you talked about the accountability, and I think that's incredibly, incredibly important. Now, do I think there are some schools that probably deal with some different issues that maybe than what we have to? Absolutely. I mean, every school is different. But some of the tools that we use for accountability at Dowling Catholic within the football program that many other programs in our department have adopted are no different than I used at Wilton and no different than what I used at Dyke New Hartford. And so it's really not just exclusive to the private school in West Des Moines. It's just more about, okay, these are the expectations, and you have to be willing to hold people to those expectations. Doesn't matter if it's the kid on the end of the bench or the kid that's getting recruited or who their parents are. It doesn't matter. It's a matter of these are the expectations. It's your job to meet them. If you're not going to meet them, this is what's going to happen.
A big challenge right now for the sport in general is a topic about concussions. I had my first T-ball game yesterday with my son. And so I don't think there's a family dinner table that isn't having a conversation of, should we allow our kids to play football? That's where we're at. I'm interested to sort of get your feedback, specifically to, dad played high school football or college football, or mom that's worried about concussions. I know you guys work with, I think Coach McLean was telling me about like a program with moms and again, education and relationships. But what's your take on the concussion topic for young kids? I mean, I don't think you run the parochial football program, but you're certainly aware of the feeder with the parochial football. So you got young kids that are padding up, putting on helmets, and same thing at a high school level. How is that conversation?
Well, it's a terrific topic. And to be honest with you, when things really started coming at us and it felt like our game was under attack was probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And honestly, it's probably one of the best things that has happened because we as a football community started looking in the mirror and say, okay, what are the things that we can do better? The first thing is I thought our athletic association stepped up and did a terrific job in terms of educating our coaches. I felt like we had coaches that had no idea what they're looking for. How do you prevent the impact of equipment, those types of things of what they could do to help with the concussion world. I really say that with the smaller schools because I've got a trainer at every one of our practices. When I was at Dyke New Hartford, I might not have been able to tell you where the first trainer would be. And so there is a difference. At a smaller school, you're everything. Here, I'm a little bit more fortunate that way. But education was important for our coaches. It's important for our parents. It's important for our kids. I think we have taken steps in that direction. The other thing is equipment. I've always felt that part of it is extremely important, but we spend a bunch of money to try to get the best of the best equipment and make sure that they're fitted appropriately. The other thing is we use Guardians on our helmets, which is we use those for practices, and lack of a better term, it kind of looks like a bonnet on a helmet, which helps decrease the opportunities for concussion. We pre-test our kids because they come through the Catholic Football League, and we may not have record at Dowling of, okay, this kid's had a head injury or anything like that. So we pre-test them. We have certain protocol that our people will follow if they suspect a concussion. If there's a confirmed concussion, there's also a specific protocol that we follow for return to school and return to play. At the end of the day, it comes down to a physician making the decision of whether that kid can play or whether they can't play. It's not in our hands. So I think that all of those things that we have put into place are really, really important for the safety of the game. And I mean this when I say it, that this game is so much safer than what it was. And, you had mentioned Coach McLean had talked about us educating our moms. We have a mom's clinic every summer. A big part of that is us talking about equipment, us talking about concussions, because to me, I wanted to meet it head on as opposed to run from it. And okay, we've heard everybody, and these are the things that we're trying to do, and this is the impact that it's had. You talk about youth football. The biggest problem with youth football is people think that they have to put them in pads too early. For us, we were one of the first ones that went the opposite way. We'll get our kids into flag football in the first grade. Really, they're playing flag football all the way to the sixth grade. The only thing different is in fourth and fifth, we'll put shoulder pads and helmets on them, but it's still flag football. It's more there for precautionary reasons than anything else, just so they can get used to that. If I had my druthers, we probably wouldn't put them in pads until seventh grade, but we've got to be able to have competition to play, and they start in the sixth grade. So I think that part is really important as well. And I think all of us have learned what we were doing well, what we weren't doing well. You know, part of it too is the old school coaching of, okay, let's line them up and have them knock the heck out of each other, and we find out who the toughest guy is. Well, you know, that's really not the way this game is played, and there's other ways that you can promote toughness other than them lining up and going against a brick wall. So I think we've learned. I think the game is much safer. Our numbers are trending in the right direction. I think some programs are still struggling with it. I can tell you this at Dowling, right now, the number one sport for concussions is soccer. And that's through the studies that we have done. Football obviously gets out there in the media. I get it. I mean, it's a popular game, and there's big money involved, and it's on TV every week. I understand, but it's not the only one. And so I think we have to continue to do a great job in all of our sports. Probably just educating, recognize the concussions, the specific protocol that we have in place, which helps us tremendously.
What about new dad? Right? Kids are getting ready to play baseball, wrestling with, hey, do I coach? Do I not coach? What advice do you have for new dad or for that young coach? What is ultimately his responsibility with that kid from 5 to 10 in terms of the approach and attitude that they give their kids about sports?
Teach them to love the game, have fun with their friends. Winning and losing really doesn't matter. It's about the experience of which they have, because, you know, studies would show between, 10 and 13, that's when kids quit. Most of the time, just based on the research that I have read all the time, the worst time that kids have is the drive home when they have to listen to dad. And, I've been, I kind of took the approach with my 3 kids is I knew I was going to coach my 2 boys in high school. At least I thought the chances were going to be good. So I was able to kind of stay away when they're younger. And fortunately, they've had good coaches that have made a quality impact on them. But for me, I think as a dad that's a coach, you have to educate yourself so you know what you're talking about. Just because you did something in high school doesn't mean it's still the way to do it. Games change. And again, even at that level, it's about the relationship and trying to build a kid's self-esteem so they think, you know what, that was fun. I want to do it again next year. And my buddies are there, and I had such a great experience. And, it's no different. Claude Wilkins is our head freshman coach, and I tell him each and every year, your biggest job is to make sure every kid that signed up as a freshman is still there as a sophomore. And that means that they had a great experience. They want to still be part of our program. And when they're anywhere from 5 to 10 years old, it's even more important.
Well, Coach, congrats on the success of building self-esteem for young men. I think that's incredible, and the impact that it makes on their families and the people around Dowling. I really appreciate you coming out today. It means a lot.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I enjoy the topics, and anytime.
Thanks, Coach.
You bet.